With me today is Marty Ringlein, aka Marty.com on X. Marty has a CS background, but is a designer by trade. He's a serial founder. In 2012, his company Include sold to Twitter pre-IPO, and he was the first ever design manager at the company and built their R&D function. In 2016, his second venture sold to Eventbrite, where he then took on the global head of R&D role. He was an angel investor and advisor in Brex, and also had checks into Stripe, SpaceX, Roblox, Coinbase, Uber, and Beehive, among many others, through a fund he co-founded called Adventure Fund. He's an adjunct professor at Northwestern, where he teaches a course on product design and development. But if that wasn't enough, in September 2024, Marty co-founded Agree.com, where they are disrupting the e-signature space by taking DocuSign head on and offering free e-signatures to all. Marty, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the intro.
Absolutely. It is a storied career and still going. First of all, I know we are now on the back of a huge announcement, huge news. So congrats on the big raise, 30,000 plus users and counting, less than 9 months. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Yeah, it's 30,000 in 6 months, which is I'm just exhausted.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been great. Because we launched it in September. So now we're already in month 7 now from then. And then, we raised a pre-seed in March of last year. And then just by the timing of this, you're like technically getting the exclusive, but like when you publish, it already have been live to the world. But we had raised a seed round in January, but we're announcing shortly now.
Fantastic. That is huge news, and it's been fun following along. I remember when you and Will announced the first raise in September. I believe it was September.
Yeah. There's always a distance. I mean, we'll even talk about this with growth strategies, but we raised it in March, but we didn't announce it till September, which is, I think as a founder, it's like so hard to like keep the secret. And like, there's a bunch of strategies for why. For us, it was use press announcements as an amplifier to other marketing initiatives, right? Because the press, they're not just like dying to write about you. So if you have something worth writing about, right, like get them to write about that and then use that to like amplify the other things you want to talk about. Because if I release some new feature, like TechCrunch isn't like excited to write about that. But if there's a fundraising announcement, they're more keen to write about that. So we timed it specifically around this big conference called SaaStr in San Francisco. A bunch of our core customers go there. So it's like, okay, let's put everything around this one moment. And then Dreamforce was like the next week. So it just worked out really well for us. And we just kind of did a takeover of San Francisco in the month of September.
That is awesome. Y'all are crushing it. I want to start sort of we're going to go very back to sort of the beginning of your career and how particularly design has impacted your career. So I know you're CS major, but designer by trade. So design is obviously at the forefront of everybody's mind right now because craft is so important, growing in importance. It's always been important. It's growing in importance. So I'd love to just get your perspective on the role of design in user growth as you've seen it throughout your career.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just always been a competitive advantage. So much of the internet is ugly. And again, coming back just like to growth, go to market, marketing strategies, I think the number one rule is just stand out, be a little bit more creative, a little bit more clever than everybody else, and people will take notice. And so, it just turns out on the internet, if your website can just be well designed or your logo can be well designed. And I think when people are listening to this, they're gonna, look at their iPhone and say, well, all these apps are beautiful and well designed. Like, yeah, that's the 40 apps that you use on a regular basis. And that's because they're well designed. But think about the 400 million startups and apps that have been built that you never heard of, that you never saw, that you ignored. So yes, the ones that you can think of off the top of your head are beautiful, but like there's a reason for that. So I'll give you a quick, real fast story. I was young, undergrad, and I was in a design course, and there was this logo competition for Nike. Obviously, the story goes, I win the competition, but two of the designers in that class who are significantly better designers than I am come up to me at the end, and they look pretty upset because this was like the competition to win. Like my logo is going to go like on Nike apparel. It's a big deal. And one of them, she just looks at me and says, "Marty, I don't think that your design was better. I think that you sold it better. Like I was able to talk about the story behind the design. And I think about design like more than just, and the reason I bring that up is I think it's bigger than just the visual aesthetic when we think about design. Like, what does it look like? I think it is this narrative and this story. And I think you got to build, and you had said the word craft, that whole thing together. Like, it's more than one thing. And I think some people are going to go into it thinking, oh, I just need a logo, or oh, my interface just needs to be attractive. And I think, no, those are just like tiny little components. It's this like summation of the parts.
So, how do you think about colors in sort of the product design process? So, how do you pair agree.com with the colors that you selected for agree.com? How do you pair include invite with the colors that you selected with those brands?
Yeah, this is a great question. Some people are going to love the answer and some people are going to hate the answer. Because as a designer, and I just started by saying, hey, you got to be creative and clever, you want to be unique. I want to do all of those things. And sometimes I don't do any of those things. Sometimes I cheat and I just look at the person to the left and the person to the right and be like, hey, they're doing a really good job. That seems to work. I should probably just do that. And a really good example of that is with include, like, we kind of like defined that color palette, and a lot of people ended up copying us because it was
Hmm.
so well done and so beautiful, and it was very unique, and our whole value prop was being unique. But at Agree, I brand new brand. I got to go up against a 22-year-old incumbent, and I got to do it around financial services, and I have to get you to trust me, right? Especially with moving the money that's related to your business. And I look around like, okay, who else is in financial services that like you trust without even flinching? And the top one at there is like Stripe,
Sure.
and beautiful brand, everything's well done, but they have this blue purple, and I've learned that it's now called blurple. Like they made a name, but it's just perfect. It is. It looks it because it's a blue is a very trusting color, but the purple part, like, it makes it look a little more modern. It looks a little cooler edge. And I was just like, I'm not gonna like invent a new color here. Blurple works for Stripe. I'm not going after Stripe. I'm going after DocuSign. I'm going to put Blurple into the e-signature
Sure.
space. So that's one where like let's not reinvent the wheel here. But there's other times where I start from scratch. I make sure that like what I'm doing looks like nothing else in the world. And there's other parts in Agree where that still happens. There's other parts of the interface where we want it to be completely unique and novel. And there's other parts of it's worked, and it's worked for the last decade. Why would you argue against that? Like, don't be
Sure.
different just for being different's sake.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's these decisions that you make up front that set sort of the stage for where the product's going, and but you can also change it if you want to. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that founders don't realize is and I know through designing my own products at times is I get some like, man, this is a one-way door decision. I can't go back once I select a color. But Windsurf just totally changed their color. Like, they got rid of the green and they're on to a new color. So you can change.
My co-founder Will, I like picking on him sometimes because it's like sometimes we get in our heads about things and we forget. And so we're putting up like the first versions of the homepage. Now again, there's no users, there's no announcement, nobody knows about it. Like my mom knows. But he makes some comment like I made some change. He's like, oh well, if you make that change, like this could happen, that could. I was like, dude, like one, like you're right, and like we should change it, but there's zero users. Like nothing
Right.
nothing happens here, right? Like there's not going to be a bunch of churn. We're not going to lose a bunch of like there's zero users, zero customers. Like who cares? And so
Right.
I think in the early days, when you have your first 100 customers, your first 1,000 customers, you're terrified. It's like in the grand scheme of making this into the monster it's going to be, like, who cares?
Right.
Change it, edit, pivot. It's so nominal, whatever. What messaging? Like, I think we overthink things sometimes. Just put it
Right.
out there, A/B test it. And if it doesn't work, change it tomorrow. The only person who's going to remember is you.
There you go. Founders, don't be afraid to pivot if you need to.
Yeah.
Pivot product idea and pivot color scheme. I have this in my mind. I sort of have this idea that I think that Um, Power laws apply to growth as well. And so, oftentimes 80% of your growth could come from 20% of the effort. You might be putting effort in all these places and then it just sort of culminates in this 20%. And so, thinking back to your first two ventures, what are some of the tactical things that you did through those ventures that were the big needle movers for growth when you were getting those companies off the ground?
Yeah. So this will go all the way back to undergrad again. And I think for founders, the thing they tell us is you're always on the hunt for product market fit, right? So PFM, we live and die by product market fit, and the annoying thing is everyone defines it differently, and I don't think anyone knows how to find it. You just kind of stumble upon it one day.
Right.
So it's exhausting and it's annoying, but my take, everyone has their own take, is that you've hit product market fit when your customer or your user is your largest marketing engine. Like when they are
Mm,
talking about it, when they are bringing more, when a majority of your users are coming to you because of your other users, you've got something special here, right? How you make money on it, how you monetize, how you try, we'll figure that out tomorrow. Just doesn't matter right now. The fact is you've got something special. Keep expanding that thing. And so back to my earliest days, coming out of school with that Nike project, man, there's not a whole lot of kids in undergrad that got a Nike logo on their portfolio. So when
yeah,
I go to apply for a job, I'm not guaranteed the job, but on that stack of resumes, I'm at the top, right?
absolutely.
So I'm always in the top 5 resumes. Doesn't mean I guarantee get the job, but like I'm going to get the interview. They're going to bring in the kid. And so that Nike thing gets me a job at Discovery Channel. Discovery Channel lets me work on things back when, again, I'm old, but there was a day where Discovery Channel was like the coolest thing. And they had Walking with Dinosaurs. But like I made the Walking with Dinosaurs website and the newsletter and the email. So I got dinosaurs on my portfolio now, right? Like amazing. And then this is like in the era of like Jurassic Park, where like this is some of the best 3G or generated dinosaurs like that have ever been created, and they're
Right.
on my website. Right? I didn't make those dinosaurs, but they look good on my website. But it means that I'm being pushed forward. But what it really means is like Marty has to get the job, but like Discovery Channel, the dinosaur is really what got me the interview. Right? It did a lot of the work for me. And then I think back to the same thing when we started Include. In the very beginning, I'm just surfing Craigslist for customers and clients, anyone that'll let me make a website for them in the beginning days, and then you get a customer and a client and a brand who, if you put that logo on your website, changes everything because
Mm,
it tells the rest of the world, oh, you're at a caliber I didn't know you were. And that is better than any ad campaign you could run, any billboard you could put up. Is just saying, I work with Apple, Google. Right? It's like, oh, you must be big time.
right.
Um, and so we've always done that. And then even with this current product with Agree, of those 30,000, what's cool is a third of them, they come to us because their origin story is someone sent them docs to sign on the platform. So
Mm,
I sent you an agreement, you signed it, NDA, employment agreement, whatever, sales contract, and then you were like, I don't know, this was not that bad. Maybe I should go create an account and sign up and give it a shot myself. So then we know, hey, something's working here, and we got to lean into that. And that's the product-led growth, right? Like
mm-hmm.
that's the PLG motions. But I'm always looking at how do I take whoever I'm working with and use them as, again, as an amplifier in some way, form, or fashion. That doesn't always look like product-led growth, but it does mean that they are my amplification. They are my megaphone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's that combination of building those viral loops into the product as you talk about, plus the brand marketing that you all are doing as well. I mean, you talked about SaaStr earlier. I mean, so it's both of those coming together too. Yeah, to
And
kind of
like be smart about it, like and use your own network. And this is, I mean, if we're doing, this is going to pivot into a founder advice pod. You gotta build these networks like years in advance. I
mm,
think that's where most people get hung up is, hey, I've got this idea, I want to go fundraise, I don't know any investors, and like you're starting at like, if you want to know how I closed the 3 million in 3 weeks, because I've been talking to these people for 3 years before I even knew I was ever going to fundraise.
right.
And then if you want to know how I closed the current round in 2 weeks, It's because right after I closed that last round and I didn't need any money, I started the conversations knowing that one day, I was just at Insight Partners. I posted on Twitter because they had this beautiful view in New York City. But my friend is like, well, what are you doing there? It's like, didn't you just close your round? I'm like, yeah, I know. And like, I'm not going to raise the A for like another 2 years, but like that meeting has to start today. And I have to
Sure.
build that relationship now. So yeah, you're always kind of getting in front of these things. You'd mentioned Beehive earlier.
Mhm.
Like they're explosive right now. Like I
Right.
mean, I look up to Tyler, but we got to invest in Tyler's very first round, and then we got to invest in the next round. So I'm a big supporter of Beehive, but obviously, I mean, Tyler and I are not BFFs, but we know each other. We're friendly. You know, we're in the same professional circles now. And he's launching his own newsletter. I'm launching this product, and I'm just thinking, hey, one, I need to get Beehive on as a customer to agree. That would be awesome. Get their sales team using it. But then, like, how do I just synergetically make all of this work? How do I help support Tyler's own Big Desk Energy newsletter? How do I get agree in front of that audience? And like, we end up like being a partner to Tyler on his own personal newsletter. We end up becoming a partner to some of the sales team on the Beehive side, but just like bring everyone together, make it all work. And then like it just turns out that the whole world loves Beehive. Like one, all those creators are publishing on it, so it's a huge network. But then investors are all about, you know, Beehive. Other designers love the product and the way it's designed. So I'm just getting in front of such a great sort of diverse audience that I wouldn't have otherwise gotten in front of.
So that's super interesting. I think I love the point about laying the groundwork for fundraising, but you're also, it sounds like, laying the groundwork for bringing on customers. Because if businesses trust you, then the switch from their legacy provider, whoever that might be, becomes that much easier. So in the case of Beehive, I know a lot of founders will probably be at the point where they're like, man, this target company that I have has been on this whatever platform, choose your platform, for 3 or 4 years. How would they ever switch? It must be so hard to untangle that switch over. So how easy was it for a company like Beehive to switch onto Agree?
Yeah, so I think, you know, again, if we're just talking like business 101, switching costs are a big deal. You know, I think when you're building a product, you want to everyone I think fixates, especially first time founders, on like the big idea. You know, what's your idea? Who cares? There's a pain. Somebody has a pain,
Right.
and you have a solution to the pain. Now, your big idea should be some really creative way to execute on that solution to the pain, right? And that's what we really want to talk about. But at the core of all this, someone's got a pain. And I think of the pains, what you really have to do is figure out the trap that we all get into is if you ask somebody on a scale of 1 to 10, if you get stuck and your pain is like a 4 to a 6, that you're not going to switch because the pain's just not that bad. It
Mm.
sucks, but like, I don't mind, you know, whatever, I'll deal with it. I need it to be a 7, 8, 9, or 10, right? If it's a 10 home run, I don't even have to pitch you. You're ready to switch like right now. I can walk you through it on this call. But if it's a 7, 8, 9, then we got to start thinking like on the switching cost side, how I want to be sensitive to the fact that it is can sometimes be scary depending on the kind of product you're switching over. It can sometimes it's just like the devil, I'm comfortable even though I hate this other product. But we with Agree, for example, we make all our money when you send invoices. So at the end of
Mm.
the day, we're kind of more of an invoicing tool. We're like a Bill.com or Stripe invoices. But I don't start there because that switching cost is very high. And the pain isn't always, it's not immediately clear that the 8 or 9 is Bill.com's fault.
Mm.
You have an 8 or 9 payment, you don't realize that it's the vendor's fault. And so I got to get you there. But I start with DocuSign, and that's why I'll always talk about e-signature. I'll talk about DocuSign because that one, the pain is it's 22 years old. It's clunky. Nobody likes paying for it. People just kind of hate the brand because, again, it's old. So I get to pick on them, and I pick on them all day long because it's faster. I can get to a conversation much quicker. I just have to go into a room and be like, raise your hand if you hate DocuSign. If you even just went around that room and be like, why? Half the people wouldn't even know why. It's
Right.
not, I love picking on them, but like the product works. It's not a bad product, but like people just freaking hate that brand so much. And I use that to my advantage. So I start with, okay, let's get you off DocuSign. Let's get you onto a better version of DocuSign. And the best part is it's totally free. Then once you're in love with that, hey, why don't we expand the use of this product?
Mm.
Why don't we get you sending your first invoice? Why don't we get you doing X, Y, or Z? Then the switch, right? It's more of a transition. Like a switch feels so binary. Like, oh, I start and I stop. Here, it's like I want to slow roll you in, and the same is with the e-signature side. Like Tyler, great. I'm an investor. I don't think it buys me much, but I think it buys me, like, I get to send him an email, I get to ask, and he can just totally say no. But what he said to me was a
Sure.
very great email where he's like, Marty, the way I run this team, because he's got a high talent team. I'm not going to tell them what to do, but for you, I will make the introduction and I will ask them, to take the call with you. But if they decide not to take the call with you, like, that's on you. You've
Sure.
got to be persuasive and do it. But I'm not going to tell anyone on my team to do anything. I was like, I totally respect that as a CEO.
Yeah.
But what he did is, he introduced me to, and he's like, hey, let's be real here. I'm going to send you to, like, the person I think you're going to have, like, the easiest path to, like, working with. So he sends me to one of the great sales reps there. And the dude was awesome. And I was like, so my job wasn't to close Beehive. My job was to close this one guy and just get this one person to use it and try it. And if they like it, what they do and what they did was just kind of tell the other, hey, you guys should give, Agree a shot. It's pretty good. Like, screw DocuSign. And then
Right.
you end up spreading through the organization. But that's a slow and steady. That's a not virtual knocking on doors. You got to have a patience for that kind of game. I think a lot of founders and builders, especially people thinking about growth, they don't have patience. They want 1,000 users. They want 10,000 users. And they want it right now. Whereas even with you building this podcast, this is episode number 1. The one thing I've learned about people with really great podcasts, because I've been on a few now, is they all have the same common response to, if you talk about, like, their first 10 episodes. Like, they almost cringe. They're like, don't go back and look at them. They'll never delete them because it's
Right.
good to have more episodes, but they're so embarrassed. The lighting's bad, the sound's bad, the microphone's bad. Whatever platform they use wasn't, and then it just gets better and better and better. And so I think same thing is true with our first 1,000, 10,000 users. You do it like the really bad way, and then you get really sophisticated as things go around. But you don't start sophisticated. You don't go and rent a studio and spend $100,000 on equipment and have a team of 4. It's
Right.
just you and a really nice mic, in your apartment, I'm assuming.
Yep. Some $15 Sony headphones. That's right. Does the
Yeah, man.
job.
Yeah.
So on that one, so there's 2 questions. I really want to talk about the villain, sort of the villain brands. So we'll go there in a second. Before that, I want to talk about this idea of bringing people into the e-signature product that you've built, and then pushing them from there to the monetization aspect of the product. How have you thought about product development? Did you develop everything before you launched, or did you develop the e-signature product and then from there get users onto the platform because people just want free e-signatures, and then that gives you a little bit of time. You can just keep growing that top of the funnel piece, and then over time develop the other aspects of the product that ultimately is further down the funnel. How do you think about the evolution of the product? Because I know the big advice now is just launch, but if you build the whole thing, you can't just launch.
Yeah. No, you got to just launch. The quintessential startup advice. If you're not embarrassed of your first version, you've launched too late. But there's sequencing to this. So the way we describe it in the pitches is that it's a classic: mature the product, mature up market, mature the product, mature, and we're just constantly doing that. And for the next 10 years, I will be still doing that. The product will not be done. There'll be things that don't work, things that are broken. And Google Calendar, I was just talking to Will about this yesterday. We have a meeting with an investor. I pinged him. I was like, hey, dude, you didn't accept the meeting. Just FYI, I don't know if you know that it's happening in
Yep.
like 20 minutes. And he's like, no, I accepted. You didn't accept. And I was like, I sent him a screenshot. And so I'm in Google Calendar in Google Chrome browser. It's like I'm using any other third-party tool.
Right.
And, it doesn't, it just shows he's not accepted. And then on his, it shows that I'm not accepted. And I'm like, Google is like 15 years into this product, $2 trillion company, and like that product still has. But if that were a bug in the Agree platform, I would be flipping out. I would be
Right.
like, this is not acceptable, right? We can't have this. Like, you can't send calendar invites and have people not know who's accepted. That just seems like basic 101 feature.
Right.
But like, there it is in Google Calendar, $2 trillion, and like that feature is broken. So to answer your question, the way we started with Agree specifically was slow and steady. What's the easiest, quickest thing I could build? The e-signature part. That's much easier than the payments part. Turns out it's only like 300 lines of code. It's not a
Oh,
whole
wow.
lot. Yeah, DocuSign, they do a lot on the enterprise side. There's a beast under there, but like the
Sure.
core the core product that they have, it's 300 lines of code. And so we build a prototype that does e-signature, and it does the digital stamping, it does the audit trail, but it does it for one agreement and one agreement only. And it turns out that it's the agreement we use to raise our pre-seed round.
Okay.
So our prototype only ever had 8 users, 8 signers, and it was the 8 investors. And they're the only ones that ever used it. And our pitch to them was, because there was no demo, was if you're in, I'm going to send you DocuSign. If it doesn't work, like you literally can't invest. And if it does work, then you know you made a good investment, and thankfully it worked. But it means that that one got scope creep because I should know better, but I run a very small fund. So for bigger funds, the investor that you're talking to isn't the person that signs the doc. There's legal counsel that signs. So it means that I need multiplayer functionality in this first prototype right away, because now I need to send it to you for review. But then we need to be able to forward that to your legal counsel so they can sign. And then I need to be able to change the signer information because I put your name down, but that's the wrong name. And I don't know the lawyer's name, right? It's like, this product got real complicated really fast. Same thing's true in payments. You review, I'm working with you, but your lawyer signs, but your finance person pays. It's like, oh man, I thought those 300 lines of code just got to 3,000 lines really fast. But we build the prototype, and then that's it, right? There's no payments, there's no invoicing, there's no money movement. It's just the one thing. And then for the MVP, what we launched in September, the question was, what's the next minimum viable version, right? I think everyone has to figure this out for themselves, but our stance was, and this was highly debated on the team, was that we need to mature the e-sig product so that obviously it can do, it's a product now. It can do anyone. So that was obvious. And the way we looked at it was you have to reach 80% parity with DocuSign for our specific customer segment's use, right? So I'm not going to build for the Fortune 100, and that, so I'm not going to get DocuSign parity there. So let's do that. And then for invoicing, let's do what we did with the prototype. Really basic, bare bones, barely works, kind of embarrassing. But at least going out of the gate, you can sign and you can pay, which is the value prop, right? But there in that first version, there's no line items, there's no sales tax, there's no recurring, there's no subscription. For anyone that runs a business, you're like, that sounds like the shittiest invoicing tool I ever needed, right? But if all you basically need is a PayPal, it's like I just need to collect money for one thing, it works very well, right? And it turns out for a lot of our early users, that's exactly what they needed to do, so it was fine. Now with this next version that's launching May 1st, it's what we call 80% now parity with Bill.com for our ICP. And it has all these things I just mentioned. And so slow and steady, right? And so now the next version, I want to one day get to 100% parity with DocuSign on all fronts. And then one day I want to get to 100% Bill.com parity. And then in between those, I want to build a whole bunch of things that neither one of those brands has ever built before, and then tie them all together. And then that's where, you've got this monster. And so right now I've got things that both of them have done. I've just put them together because both of them are separate. And so that's my unique thing. But eventually I'll have everything both of them do and things neither one of them have ever done. But that's going to take years.
Right. Yeah. You've built the thing that is going to get people in the door and solves the biggest challenge. And then you did that after as you raised your first round, before public launch, notably. Yep. And then over time, you've brought your investors know what they're signing up for. So you've brought them along the way, and they're aligned to kind of what you're doing. And then ultimately you start solving the challenge that helps the business, and maybe the from what you're saying earlier, the unseen challenge potentially within the organizations that might even be process related, but you're solving it with technology.
Yeah, and we were always, like you said, we were always very honest and transparent with the investors about the state of the product, how good it is and how weak it is and where it's weak. What's frustrating for founders when you're launching is your landing page, your market, you're going to want to, your instinct, and this is a right instinct, is to be boastful, right? So you're going to put some messaging out there that maybe implies you do some things you don't quite yet do, right? Just for the job you want, not the job you have. But what's going to be hard is people are going to get into your product that are not the right people at this stage to
Mm,
use your product. And that's a hard thing to swallow because I'm just happy anyone's there. And I want, if you're there, right, I want to be a good host and I want you to
sure.
have a good time. But what we have to do as a team is we have to know there are support emails that we respond to right away, and there are support emails that the way I describe it is we politely decline.
Mm,
You need, like, there's somebody who just asked recently on Twitter, hey, do you I work mostly in Google Docs and I want to bring over to Google. We are building a Google Doc, a Google Drive to agree sort of integration, but like it's maybe the third person that's ever asked for it of 30,000, right? So the of all the important things, the least most important thing. So that's one where I have to just politely say, hey, we might not be ready for you right now.
mm.
I've got a bunch of workarounds, right? If you would like to go to Google Drive, Google Docs, export as PDF, and then it'll work. If you want me to do it for you, I'll do it.
There you go.
You know,
Yeah.
I'll do white glove. You know, I'm happy to do things that don't scale.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if that gentleman says, no, this is a piece of shit, like, I hate this product, like, I need to sit there and swallow that and be
Mm,
like, yes, for you, it is
yeah.
currently that. And that is a fair description in the terms of how you see it. But I think that, like, is probably the most brutal thing any founder can hear is that, like, you know, it's not working for someone who, like, wants to give you a shot.
Right. Mm, yeah. Important advice. I think important advice for all founders out there that are navigating that. You got to make tough decisions, and you got to have a clear North Star to make the tough decisions.
Yeah.
I
And
want to.
then the letters everyone uses, because there's so many acronyms, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
PFM and ARR, but ICP is the one that we've just been living and dying. So, you know, who is your initial customer profile? And I think
Mm,
you've got to be like so dead set on that, especially from a marketing and growth perspective. Like, who are you
totally.
talking to? What messaging are you? Yes, you came up with some really cute and creative line, but does it land with that audience? You know, because we struggle with do I say revenue? Do I say cash? Like what? Where, do I show a picture of cash? Like, if you just have a bunch of $100 bills, like, people take notice of that. But does that connote like cheapness?
Mm,
Like, obviously no business that does, over $1 million gets paid in cash, but we connote cash with revenue. So it's like we have to think through all these things from the marketing side too.
sure. Yeah. Starting with that. Starting with the audience, and then what's the problem? Who's the audience? What's the problem that they're experiencing? How does your product solve the problems, and then what features are part of your product that solve the problem?
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the villain brands. Here it is. All right, so I want to share this tweet that you posted. You talked about it a little bit earlier, but can you expand upon villain brands, how you came to the conclusion that it was okay to create a frenemy in DocuSign, and why it works as a growth strategy?
Yeah, yeah. If you scroll just a little bit, there's some logos in that graphic
There
there.
you
So
go.
there are these villain brands. There are these brands where when you hear their name, you get this visceral reaction, right? Some of the ones I'll say, you see them here, right? So Jira, everyone's like, oh, Jira, Workday, Ticketmaster, Microsoft Teams. As soon as someone tells you have to
Yep.
join a Microsoft Teams, you're just like cringe. The IRS, DMV, you're like stressed. You're just hearing their name. And it turns out that DocuSign is in this camp where when people hear it, they're just like, they kind of get this visceral reaction. Again, as I said earlier, like, of all of them, actually, like, not for like that good of a reason. They just, when we did research around it, people just don't feel the values there. They don't feel like that what they get in return from that company is worth the money that company, it feels like, extorts from them. So we
Sure.
lean into that a lot, right? So we said, hey, so I believe that every founder has a mountain to climb, right? And some hills are steeper than others, but we all have a boulder to push up that mountain, and some of ours are bigger than others, and mine's a little bit smaller because I go up against a villain brand. So this
Mm,
came to me. I was in a conference here in New York a year ago in August, right before the launch of the MVP. And a buddy of mine who's running the conference, 500 people in New York, he said he'll give me 60 seconds on stage. And I was like, oh, I'll take it. But another marketing 101, you have a chance to get on stage. You just take it, figure out what you'll say later. So I had no idea
totally.
what I'd say for 60 seconds. And I kind of, blacked out. I get on stage and it just came to me. I just yelled to the audience, today is the last day you'll ever pay for DocuSign. And cheers, like cheers erupted. And prior to this, my co-founder and I, we'd always had an agreement. It's like, hey, we'd had like a thesis for how we were going to market and position. And we had actually said, we're not going to call out other companies or incumbents. We just won't be that brand. And I don't know why I just thought that was my only play for the 60 seconds. And I think I was nervous as it came out of my mouth. I was like, oh shit, I hope Will's not pissed I did that. But that cheer, and like some people were standing, like literal standing ovation
Wow.
from a few folks, where it just changed our perspective instantly. Like this works. So we started throwing it on like 5x7 postcards, very slowly getting it out into the world, seeing how people responded. And then I started like putting those up on like light poles at like things like South by Southwest. And the amount of people that took a picture and said, hey, I saw this sign that said today's the last day you'll ever pay for DocuSign, and and I wanted to know what this thing was. I was like, I hate that it works, but it works. And so we got a big billboard that's going to go up on, this is me really poking the bear now. It's going to go up on Monday, May 5th, but it is a block and a half from the DocuSign office.
No way.
But it's also on this Second Street, which is by a Blue Bottle coffee shop, but it is like where all the VCs are in San Francisco. But it's also the street that you would walk down if you're in downtown San Francisco to go to the baseball stadium. And we are in baseball season right now. So it's going to get so it's a good location. But it is just one big sign that says today's the last day you'll ever pay for DocuSign, agree.com. So we're poking the bear. And so I've been slow and steady. Now this is the biggest, most brazen thing that we've done publicly. And I'm kind of scared, honestly. I mean, there's no legal ramifications. It's just like, oh man, this is bold.
Sure. Well, and it's funny. You see, like Aravind from Perplexity, he changed stance on that pretty hard as well. Everybody, when he first started out with Perplexity, it was like, oh, you guys are taking on Google, and he's like, no, we're different than Google, da 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 da. And then he just leaned into it, and he's like, we're gonna try to replace Google, and create.
And you see it all the time. Brex goes after Concur.
Sure.
Really another brand. It's kind of a villain brand, but a lot of people don't know about it. Villain brand, if you're like, one of 5,000 employees and you have to do expense management, you're just like, oh, Concur. I hate between my receipts and Concur. Another one that I've seen a lot, which is really interesting. Oracle owns a company called NetSuite. It does invoicing, and they go after QuickBooks. But Oracle, usually in Marketing 101, you don't call out another brand if you're the bigger brand, because there's no value to calling attention to that. You're giving them free marketing. On my side, that doesn't. You all already know about DocuSign. I'm giving them no free marketing, right? So it doesn't work out. With DocuSign, strategically should never say the words agree. Even though if you got your screen up, you should pull up DocuSign.com right now and see the word that's on there. It's a little. Let's see what happens, because they switch it every now and then, but it's 90% of the time. We'll see what's there.
Yeah, let me pull this up. This is hilarious. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and this is relatively recent. I'm not going to say it's because of us, but I mean, it feels like we're in their heads.
It is, and it is right there. Oh my
Look
goodness.
at that. Everything you need
Wow.
to agree. All I want is
Incredible.
just put .com in there. Good to go. Yeah.
Seriously. Wow. Well done.
So I do think we're in their heads. And they've done a little bit of a redesign. You can see they've got a little bit of a blue purple too. Now I can't say they stole from me because I stole from Stripe, right? So everyone steals from someone. But it is the new hot Silicon Valley color, the blurple.
And they've not inconspicuously have a very large try for free button in the top right. So
and then even like the subtext, send, sign, and manage for free. That's our tagline: send,
free.
sign, and get paid, right? Yeah. And so like,
wow.
and that's what I get upset about. This is a lie. It's not it's a free trial. Right? You get envelopes. Like it is not for free, but the implication is.
Sure. Well, and you had said something really interesting on, I think it was on Twitter, I saw it, or X, and you had said that when you vilify a brand, even if it's, in a frenemy sort of way, you get to leverage their however many years of brand building around what e-signatures even are. You leverage that in the vilifying of that brand, and then you just tell everyone why your product is better.
Yeah, and so again, we'll do a little like Marketing 101 here. It's called anchoring. And so what I'll do is, hey, what is agree? Well, it's like DocuSign, but better. And so what I've done there is, what DocuSign is. So I don't have to spend let's just say I have 60 seconds with you. I don't have to spend 60 seconds. You can sign shit. I get it, mostly for like legal documents. That makes sense. Now the question that almost 95% of people ask at the end of that statement is, well, what makes it better? And it's like, oh, glad you asked. That's all I want to talk about, right? I don't want to talk about what it is. I want to talk about what differentiates it, what makes it valuable. So like it's like that, and then sometimes I'll get clever. I was like, oh, and the best part is it's free, so I can piggyback on the word better. But then I get into like, oh, it does invoicing and payments, and then I'll get really into like the ICP. It's like, oh, it's really great for sales teams, and then be like, the sales teams that use it, they see these kind of results, and then like they don't realize just by saying what is agree, they were in a full-on sales pitch right now.
Right.
But yeah, so I like villainizing a brand because I can anchor to it. So if you call out their name and everybody who you're talking to understands what that company does, they've instantly understood what you do if they know you do that thing.
Right. And product builders, if they're a little worried to take on a big competitor, or if they don't have a clear, if their competitor isn't a big name, you can still anchor. You can still anchor without vilifying. Hey, we are like this, but we do this.
Yeah. You see
Without
it with a
being,
lot of
yeah.
startup pitches, we're like the Uber of,
Right.
the Pinterest of, and it helps. Some people get a little tired because it gets done too much.
Hmm.
But yeah, so you got to be. Then this comes back to the like be creative and be unique and stand out. Don't be part of the noise.
Right, right, exactly. So anchoring on sort of the brand building around Agree and how you've used DocuSign to really explain to people what it is, you can't you can't look at Agree and not recognize that you guys have something unique about your branding, which is the .com in the name. I know you're big on domain names, agree.com, marty.com, Twitter is
That's right.
marty.com. So Marty, big.com guy. And so, I read that you famously advise startup founders to start with the domain name when forming a startup idea. So can you talk to me a little bit about this idea of the .com, starting with the .com and the impact that can have on a company's growth?
Yeah, and this just comes back to that mountain we all have to climb and that boulder we have to push up it, right? If you have Yeah, you can launch without the .com. Yeah, not everybody can, has the privilege or the means to get it. But your boulder becomes so much
Mm.
smaller if you have the .com. It's also it's back. There was a time where like the .com wasn't cool. Like it was cool in the early days of the internet, like pets.com, and then because of the .bomb crash, you the cool thing was like dropping the vowel, and you had like flicker without the
Mm.
e or include without the I. You had you played on the TLD, so like delicious was like the syllables de,
Mm.
dot dot dot, and dig with two G's. And but now the .com is back, and so most of the big brands are going .com first, and so for us it was critically important because I am going after DocuSign. I'm going after you have to when I buy the .com, what I'm really buying is trust. Because if I asked you to sign a really important legal document and move $150,000 through a platform called Let's Try Agree.io, it's a little like, what are we
Right.
doing? Just send me the DocuSign is what you're going to say. And what's
Right.
great about Agree.com is one, it's new, so most people have never heard of it. When we've tested it with folks that are signers, it was like, hey, what was your perception of this brand that was just put in front of you? They thought like, oh, I think I've never heard of this. It must be like, how many employees do you think it has? Like, I don't know, 150 employees. Like, oh, that's great. We only have 7. And they're like, how long do you think it's been around? They're like, I don't know, like 10, 13 years. Like, oh, that's great, a year. But they're like, well, why do you think you've never heard of it then? It's like, oh, well, it just must be what big companies use. And DocuSign is what one person said that I love is like, DocuSign is what real estate agents use. And I was like, I love that, right? And it's like, I didn't know that. I didn't think about that, but like I play into it. But the real reason we did it is not for our customer, it's our customer's customer. So I can get you to use Agree without a great domain name, but when you send it to your customer, they need to feel confident. They need to feel like it's trustworthy. They need to feel like it's real, that the thing they're signing will like hold up in court, that it's legitimate. And agree.com gives them that comfortability. Also, nice thing, if I just have a big billboard that says agree.com, it sparks curiosity. So like I don't even need to say anything else. You're not my ICP, but you'll still go to it. It works really well when I go to a conference. I just have a shirt that says agree.com. People they're like, what is agree.com? You gotta ask. And I'm like, I'm glad you asked.
And it has the .com sort of has, especially agree, AGRE, a 5-letter .com
Yep.
has a lot of it almost has an elegance about it, that 5 letter .coms don't come easy.
Yeah.
And
So
so
it
that's
feels
another piece,
expensive.
I
It
think.
feels premium.
Right.
It feels established. It does not feel like something that in the early days, three three guys could just stand up, right? Like that does not compute. And again, dress for the job. That is not the. I do not want you to know that there were three guys building, your e-signature platform in the early. I don't want you to know that there's seven. Like I want you to believe
Right.
it's 70 or 170, just because I think we feel more comfortable with that. Like you want to believe there's a large engineering team and a large support staff, even though like in these days with AI, like we can do a lot more better with smaller teams. People are still, that would make them uncomfortable.
Sure. And what I'm hearing, and like what a big takeaway for founders, product builders is, you know, if you can get the .com, get the .com. If you can't get the .com, then understand what your audience is looking for and align your domain name to sort of match the thing that they're looking for. If you're an upstart project that needs to sort of be a little bit edgy, then maybe .com's not your path. But if you need to sow security and comfort and elegance, then .com is absolutely the way to go, and you should put your
And
efforts to get the right one.
Paul Graham has a famous tweet where someone asked him, "Hey, what if you can't get he's a big .com guy." And they said, "What if
Mm,
you can't get the .com?" And he said, "We'll get some other name .com." And
mm.
so, hey, I love Agree. DocuSign loves Agree, but maybe you have to change your name. And the original name was Agree.xyz actually, so it didn't start as
Was
.com.
it? So I
Yeah.
was going to ask you about that. How much of the ability to get the .com for Agree drove the name Agree? But it sounds like it was Agree first, and then you figured out a way to get the .com for
Yeah, it
Agree.
was super clear that we loved Agree, and it made sense, and we got to a point where there's no other better name. So it worked out perfectly that the domain was up for sale.
Mm, that's awesome. So speaking
Yeah.
of domain and the SEO value of the domain, I guess quickly we'll talk about SEO, and then I want to talk about some of the ranking that you guys have been seeing in ChatGPT. Talking about SEO first before we pivot to AEO. How much organic growth do you see through the ownership of that agree.com domain name?
So I don't know. What I can tell you is of the 30,000, it almost where they came from. It's almost a third, a third, a third. A third of
Mm,
it is organic. I just don't know how much of it is this podcast. I don't know how much because it's so great. I can't ask you to do like agree.com/podcast name or
sure,
if I put on a billboard agree.com/billboard, it kills the .com.
sure.
Like let's just say agree.com. So I can't do a lot of attribution on a lot of the guerrilla marketing stuff we do. And it doesn't make any sense to have a QR code. Like
Hmm.
it's agree.com. It's perfect. Like why would I?
Right.
QR code's harder. So I don't know, but a third of the users are organic, and that is the .com, the SEO, podcast interviews, guerrilla marketing. A
Hmm.
third of them is paid, mostly Google. We got the CAC down pretty low. It's like $3.24 now, but been really good and really well targeted. And then the other third I'd mentioned before, it's the PLG motions. So the
Hmm.
users.
So let's talk about the Chat GPT piece. I'm going to share. I've got another tweet here that I'm going to share that I thought was super interesting. Is how you all are ranking in Chat GPT.
This would be my good
Yeah.
opportunity to give a shout out to Katy Perry, not the Katy Perry you're thinking of, who's an astronaut, but the infamous marketeer here in New York. She's pretty popular on Twitter, but we had the fortune of getting her to help us and work with us. But she's helped us do a lot of our marketing efforts,
Mm,
and she's responsible for that. Well, the two-thirds we do. I'll take responsibility for the product-led growth, or the team will. But she's on the Google search side and the organic side. She drives a lot of that. But we were getting drinks the other day, and she's got she just does everything. But she's got a newsletter now too. And she says one of the things that's been top of mind for her is, how do you, if customers are going to go to ChatGPT to say, hey, what's the best e-signature tool? How the heck do you show up in that? And I was like, well, that's a darn good question. So she
wow.
started going down a whole bunch of rabbit holes.
So has Katie really been the big driver for helping y'all rank quote unquote in ChatGPT?
She's the driver for one, asking the question. It's
Okay.
like, oh, that's a good question, right? We should get to
Hmm.
the answer of that. How would you rank? And then she's the one that's done all the research. So she went down the rabbit hole. What she found was one of the biggest ways that OpenAI specifically answers very specific questions like this is when you say something like e-signature, like which is the best, it'll go and find a bunch of articles that list a bunch of sites. It'll go to the sites, and then what it actually looks for is the FAQs. So it seems like in the old days for SEO, if you went to someone's footer, they'd always have a link called a sitemap. No one has a sitemap anymore, but that was for the early days of search bots because it let them search faster, quicker. It seems like FAQ is the new sitemap. And so that means that like in 5 years from now, there'll be no more FAQs, just like there's no more sitemaps because the AI will just be that good. But right now it is using it as a cheat. And I tested it the other day because I'm going to Stripe sessions in San Francisco on Monday. And I want to do a little bit of guerrilla marketing. And so I want to do it around the Moscone Center where the convention is, but then I want to do it by the hotels where the guests are likely to stay. But what hotels are they staying at? So I just asked ChatGPT during Stripe sessions, what hotels has the conference officially partnered with? And then where are the attendees most likely to stay? If I wanted to specifically do guerrilla marketing, give me a list. And so it came back and it said like, hey, I don't know, but I do know one thing it said specifically is that you can do early badge pickup at a hotel called Park 55. And so what ChatGPT told me was we're inferring that means it's an official partner hotel of the conference. So of all the hotels, you should pick that one, and then you should pick these like 6 hotels that are in the same vicinity that are of the same like class of hotel. Right. So it's like, okay, if you're staying at a Park 55, you're probably not staying at a Holiday Inn. So stay at these kind of hotels. I was like, well, that was a pretty good inference, but the way it wrote the Park 55 thing was so specific. I wanted to go back and research. And when I went on Stripe session site, it's 1000% in the FAQ where that information is. And I'm like, oh man, she's right. That's where it's getting it from. But I liked on this graphic that you're showing, what I thought was really clever here is for agree.com under, well, one, I didn't ask it about API and embedding. It just, it assumed that would be a variable. I guess people search for that a lot, but it says coming soon, ? Which is 1000% accurate. Like I love the, like coming soon.
Wow.
It's like that is actually true. Like I don't know when it's coming, but soon, like the question mark was perfect. Like this is not Photoshopped. This is straight up screenshot.
And that's not in any. Is that in your FAQs?
No, it don't. The words "coming soon" aren't. But like, hey, there's an API, and you can infer from the writing that it's not here yet, but it's on the horizon.
So then, I think the super tactical learning there is what I'm hearing is if you're trying to optimize for, organic agent growth, then have a really good FAQs portion of your site that is really indexed to likely what people are searching for. So use SEMrush or something like that to identify what people are searching for, and then create FAQs around that.
Yep, exactly. So that's what Katie did. And then that, one, it's a thesis. They're probably someone who's much more, well-versed on this topic. It's like, these guys are idiots. Let us know, man. We take all the advice we can get. But like, that's the thesis. And then what Katie's done is she's created that FAQ for us. And so now it's actually one of my tabs open here. I've got to go create the FAQ on the website now.
So you had mentioned there was a post you had done as well that specifically was talking about some of there was really a 3-step process to that you guys had to driving growth, and one of those was you were talking about viral loops built into the product to activate product-led growth. So you said specifically here, we built virality into the experience to activate PLG motions within the product. Our users are our largest marketing engines. And you mentioned one specifically, the sending of the docs and that people have to sign up. In addition to that, what other viral loops have you built in that help drive organic growth?
That's the biggest one. The other ones that are sort of tangential are Teams functionality. So let's get you to have more of your company involved. This helps, especially with the invoicing side. There are very few tools in the market in which the sales team and the finance team are in the same tool. Like sales has Gong and Salesforce, but finance doesn't have a seat in either one of those. Finance, has let's call it Bill.com or QuickBooks. Sales never goes into those. Finance has LegalZoom. Finance never goes into legal Zoom. So like everyone's siloed. Agree is this very unique place where those three specific silos, legal, sales, and finance, would come together. And so we're by no means ever trying to be or compete with Slack, but you become a mini little Slack because the way these contracts are being sent around between legal, finance, because legal creates the draft of the contract, slacks it over to finance or to sales. Sales puts it in the DocuSign, sends it out for signature, gets the fully executed from DocuSign, goes into Slack, sends it to finance, and then finance creates an invoice and sends it out. And then finance pings sales when 45 days has come and gone. It's like, hey, your client never paid. And then sales has to go to legal and say, hey, they signed but they never paid. What do we do? But it all happens in Slack, which is a weird place for that particular workflow to occur. And so we look at it as where does it naturally make sense for certain workflows to stay synergetic, and then how do we keep people in places like Agree, and then how do we get more people to be in the Agree ecosystem? So that means even features that we haven't totally released yet, like more commenting and redlining. Like one thing I really want to do is we found that a lot of people are using Google Docs for their contracts because what they want to do is they want to be like, hey man, I'm going to send you this NDA, but I want to send you the NDA before I send you the NDA. Because if you got any big issues with it, let me know before I put it I go through the work of DocuSign and send it to you, and then you reject it. And so it's like that. There's a much better way to do that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Investment docs are a lot like that. If you're ever fundraising, the investor wants to see the terms. They don't want you to send them something to sign. Let me see it. It's like, okay, this looks good. Send me to the inside.
Yeah, interesting. An easy draft prior to the official thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so founders or product builders are thinking about growth. It's finding those really creative ways that are just what I'm hearing is that are very natural in the user journey or the user experience, where it just makes sense to be able to either share something if they're sharing something out, or within the organization. In your case, your sharing is not necessarily on social, but it's a document to someone else. That's the share function that you guys have really captured.
Yeah, and I think it's just, look for, I think what you said was, it has to be natural, so it can't be a
Mm-hmm.
forced function. And then where are you just providing more value? Like where are there opportunities where you can just increase value, right? And these are ones where they are not 9 out of 10 pain points. They're more like two or threes, but it doesn't matter because they get up on the priority list because there's a viral component to it. So now you're like weighing this optionality of like, okay, it's a 3 pain, so it should be low, but it's like a 9 viral. It's like, okay, we're going to get more users, more activity. There'd be more stickiness. Switching costs will be higher now. So we talked about like the pain of getting you to switch off of your competitor. Now you have to invert that. How do you make it so that people don't want to switch off of you?
Right.
Like ironically, you need to have a pretty strong switching cost.
Mm-hmm. And you should have signals towards that. Like if you knew what it was that could get people off of the incumbent, then
Yeah.
you should have signals towards what's the thing that's going to keep them in your ecosystem. That's a really interesting learning. One of the things that I noticed that you guys do was that you guys have really worked tactically with Beehive and Product Hunt to drive user growth. So can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing with Beehive specifically, and then also Product Hunt to drive growth?
No, Beehive's just awesome because well, one, I want to be a supporter as a fan of Tyler's, but then also
Sure.
as an investor. And he's just constantly putting out new features. And so they released this ad network. So now anyone that has, a newsletter can have advertisers, and you don't have to go
Mm.
find them yourself. Like there's an ad network. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. I read a lot of Beehive newsletters. And so if we could put Agree in front of those, like that would be really compelling. And so, yeah, we were working with them, wanted to be one of their first users of the
Mm.
product, and wanted to be supportive. And then also secretly, just between you and I, it's like, hey, this would also be a great time for you guys to send out your first invoice on Agree, right? And so it's a nice, easy, like place to do that too. So
Mm.
that's a trick that I'll use sometimes. But yeah, for us, even product time, it's just where is your customer? What's the messaging? Where does it make sense? And product, I'm usually an amplification person.
Mhm.
So if we know, like for example, if we did a big fundraise, um, let's amplify because a lot of the newsletters that we picked are ones that founders and VCs read, and you might be thinking like, well, why are you advertising to VCs? It's like, no, don't think about me advertising to the VC. And it's not like I'm advertising because I just closed the round.
Hmm.
But in one, I do want them to know about Agree. But what is a VC? And a VC is a capital provider to a portfolio of companies that are my ICP.
Right.
And they have a direct connection to them, right? So I want the VC reaching out to me and be like, hey, Marty, heard about Agree. What they'll say often is, we see Agree everywhere. In one, from a marketing survey, I know that's not true because I know what my spend is. But in the 7 places that I've strategically placed it, you go to 6 of them. So it
Right.
does feel like it's everywhere. But I want them to take a call with me. I want them to be like, oh my God, I love it. Like, how can I be helpful? Great
Mm.
question. I just have one ask. Of your 120 portfolio companies, introduce me to 3. Like
Mm.
small act, 3. I want 3, and give me the bottom of the barrel, man. Give me the ones that do like 1 or 2 million a year. I don't need your big fish. Like, give me your seed stage company, right? Give me
Right.
your one with like 4 employees. They're probably going to find more value in the product anyway. So small ask, but it's super meaningful because again, it's a distribution engine of
Hmm.
a venture capitalist with a portfolio. And in product time, you have people who are constantly looking for new products, and these are people who, when they're on product hunt and they're active, they also take that to Twitter and LinkedIn and Reddit, because these are folks. The reason they're on product hunt is they're not looking for new products. They're not using 100 new products a day. They want to be the person that knows about the thing before everyone else
Hmm.
does. And so I want that person telling their audience about Agree is the new, and I want them doing it for free.
Right. Yeah, you guys, what I've heard just really throughout most of this conversation is you've really honed in on who your ICP is, and that allows you to not only build for that person and prioritize building for that person, but it also allows you to strategically place either advertising dollars, marketing dollars, or just marketing time to make sure that you're in front of that ICP all the time.
Yeah, one thing I'll kind of, I know we're wrapping up, so leave the group with is that one, I might talk fast and it might sound like there's a place of conviction here, but a lot of it is we are going kind of scared shitless sometimes, and we don't know, and a lot of it is a hypothesis. But I think we are 2 decades in really good at identifying when and where we're wrong, and then pivoting quickly. And this is why, like, the worst question you could ask me is like, "Hey, tell me about some of your big pivots," because there aren't big pivots. There
Mm-hmm.
are 1,000 small pivots a day where it's
Mm.
like, okay, tried that, move on. And it's like, they're so small and insignificant, I don't even remember them, but they were there. And if I kept going down that path, it would have been really bad. But it was like, 10 minutes in an afternoon where we pivoted away from it. And the other thing on the ICP is it should be constantly changing. When we first launched, or even between the prototype and the MVP, I would always say signature and a pulse. I just want that's all you need. Signature and a pulse. I don't care if you have revenue, if you're a business, you're a Gmail, it doesn't matter to me. Signature and a pulse.
Mm.
Because the other value I'm getting is not just how you're using the product, where it's breaking. Because I'm the only one using it at that moment. So I want to see, and again, it's painful because the number one thing I'm looking for is where it breaks, which means it's breaking. And then when I learn, it means that it's actually breaking. So it'd be great if I learned nothing and it never broke, but that's never been true of anything anyone's ever built. Like Google Calendar is still freaking broken.
Right. ChatGPT, you posted about that the other day, Sam Altman.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah,
this
yeah,
isn't anywhere near what we want it to be.
yeah. Even Zoom. I'm sure you've all been on Zoom, where as
Hmm.
soon as you opened it up, it started like doing the download for the update. I'm like, this is the worst time to update. I'm late. But
Right.
it's like, how does Zoom, right, $1 billion enterprise, like, how do they make that fumble? How do they make
Right.
that misstep? Or Apple, anyone on Apple right now, you're when you do a screen share or you're talking to somebody on video and that little green icon
Hmm.
pops up now and you can't get rid of it.
Hmm.
We all hate it. You're telling me no product manager at Apple beta tested this thing, but Apple, 30 years old, $1 trillion company, like they fumbled it.
Right. Known for product design. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So we're gonna be okay, guys. It's gonna be
That's
okay.
right. So we're gonna go quickly rapid fire here, Marty. I got 4 more questions for you. The first one is, who is your favorite marketing follow on X?
Well, Katy Perry. I can't
There
say
you go.
anybody else. She's amazing. You got to follow her. She's got some really great stuff. Because I've been following her for years, and I just slid into her DMs one day and was like, "Hey," because I knew she went off on her own. She was leading market. She was CMO at Public.com, so she knows a
Mm.
good .com. But I slid into her DMs, and she went on her own. I was like, "Hey, if you're up for new clients." I've got another awesome.com about to launch. And but we had interacted a little bit on Twitter. She was like, yeah, Marty, I'm up for it. And it's been,
Awesome.
yeah,
Follow
we've
Katy
been in love
Perry.
with her work, Katy Perry.
And then which startup do you most admire for the way they approach growth marketing?
Yeah, I mean, this is one big advertisement for Beehive. I just love what those guys are doing. Tyler's just so good, and just like they just started running a big campaign here in New York, so like Beehive is everywhere. Brex just did too. Oh, I will give since I've been talking about Beehive so much, the
Mhm.
Brex team. They are great. It's not guerrilla marketing. It's like underutilized, clever sort of advertising assets. Like they've been doing that better than anybody else. I think Ramp's been doing some cool stuff, but like their stuff is really expensive. It's high production, and it's a
Mhm.
little bit like let's just outshine Brex, which like, hey, you're doing it and you're advertising, but I just feel like you're advertising against Brex more than you're like. And so I like Brex is very creative. They've just like they dominated bus stops when no one advertised on bus
Mm.
stops, and it worked. Like who would have thought?
I've got a giant Brex uh, sign outside of my window. Like it's huge. I'll send you a picture
I love
after.
it.
It's hilarious. Last one for you here. What is the best growth strategy or channel for B2B SaaS?
I still think that Twitter and LinkedIn are pretty undefeated. If you again, you can't go day one and start building a community, but if you I've been on X since near the beginning, so I'm 19 years in to Twitter, so it'll always be Twitter to me.
Right.
But like, coming on 20,000 followers, but it's like that didn't happen overnight, and
Mm.
so but I can find like on LinkedIn, I get a lot of engagement, and not instant, not like likes or comments. I get a lot of people like at a conference or at a meetup, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw that thing you posted." I was like, "Well, like it next time, dude."
Right.
But they say it so much that one, I know it's hitting, I know it's landing, I know they're seeing it, even if I'm not seeing the engagement that I want to see. Where like there's no comments. Sometimes some of them go a little viral and there's like 2 million views, but other times it's like crickets. But they mention it in person, so I know it
Mm.
landed. And the same thing's true with marketing. I'll do a bunch of work and I'll think no one saw it, and then someone will be like, "Oh my god," or they'll send me a photo of something they saw, just like the big ad outside your window. And
Right.
I'm like, okay, it's working. Yeah, we went to first time we did a billboard on the 101. It was like that same day it went up. I'm at a conference and somebody came up to me and was like, "Just saw your billboard." I'm like,
Mm.
"It's working."
Don't you wish?
Attribution.
Don't you wish people could like the billboard? Like, there's
Yeah.
got to be a way to do that. Well, Marty, this has been awesome. What I'll do is I'll drop a link to Agree. It's gonna be very easy.
Thank you.
Agree.com in the show notes. I'll provide your Twitter specifically,
Yeah.
in the show notes, not your X profile, your Twitter profile. And then yeah, super. Again, congratulations on the raise. That's super exciting, and I know myself and listeners of this podcast will certainly be following along with your journey and probably, hopefully, switching over to agree.com after they listen to this.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Marty.